By the age of 9, I was part of the GB squad. I'd become national champion. My goal was to get to the Olympics, and my whole training and life was revolved around doing that. We'd have our fat percentage taken, and I was constantly told I was fat and overweight from the age of 6. And girls were missed off the team because they didn't weigh a certain amount, not based on performance. Like, I hadn't had the success that everybody thought I was going to have because I hadn't achieved the Olympics. Who am I now? What is next? Like, everybody knows me as Rebecca the gymnast. I got to race in the Elite 15 race at the World Championships in Manchester on home soil, and that was just incredible. So yeah, it was sad. My kids were there as well, and Stu was there, and I remember just walking off course. So I secured my spot for the Elite World Championships in Nice, and so I was literally like on top of the world and the best that I could ever do. And then 6 weeks later, I couldn't walk. I want to be the oldest person in the gym when I'm 70, not the youngest person in the nursing home.
Hello and welcome to Becoming Lucy with me, Hannah.
And me, Lucy. So before we get into it today, we've got today's guest, which is someone very special. Becca has been an athlete pretty much her whole life. She was a British gymnastics champion by the age of 10. She's won medals all over the world, and she was even picked for Team GB ahead of the 2004 Olympics. She's had some brutal injuries along the way, and yet every single time she's found a way to bounce back stronger. From gymnastics to becoming the UK's fastest female in HYROX, she's shown exactly what fighting spirit looks like.
And that is why we love her. She's still so normal. School runs, coaching, running a business. And I've heard that you still do the weekly shopping, Aldi.
Again, you can take the girl out of the elite sport, but you can't take her out the special aisle. But she's living proof that you can achieve incredible things and still stay totally grounded.
And that's also what we love. No ego, no hierarchy, just pure support for everyone around her.
I can say that firsthand because Becca was actually my old coach.
Which makes this even better and even more special. So actually, before we get into your journey, Becca, can you tell us how you and Lucy first met?
We actually first met on a training camp, wasn't it, Luce? Over in Malaga at Mike's gym. We were both actually being coached by somebody else then. And yeah, we all came together to train in the sunshine and prepare us for our upcoming events. And then obviously as we got to know each other, we realised we only lived half an hour from each other. We were very close. And I'd been on Lucy's bedroom wall for a while.
Explain.
Really weird.
Yeah, please explain.
So you know how you have like vision boards and like you obviously manifest, and one of my things was obviously to get to podium in HYROX. And before I even knew who Becca was, I'd just got onto like a random Google picture, which was Becca. And then obviously once I met Becca and realised, I was like, you've been on my bedroom wall for like 6 months.
So we fangirling, and that's amazing. I love that. Do you know what? That is proof that manifesting works, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I made it to podium eventually, but I was like, I basically manifested to meet Becca.
And we had a fresh photo, didn't we, together, and it went up next to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it all works out.
Yeah.
I love that. That's amazing. That is so good.
So that's obviously how we got to know each other. But today's episode is obviously to delve in a little bit deeper. So I kind of want to take you back, Becca, to when you were little Becca, really, in that first leotard, and how you came across gymnastics and basically what it means, what it meant to you.
Yeah, so I started gymnastics when I was about 5. And I just loved it. I was just full of energy. Just went to the local leisure centre classes, as you do, as so many young little girls and boys do. And I progressed really quickly. I soon sort of started winning events and competitions. I then changed club to work with a high performance coach. And yes, and I just got on the track pretty quickly. It was a lot of hours, a lot of time, a lot of dedication, and yeah, by By the age of 9, I was part of the GB squad. I'd become national champion. I was training 24 hours a week. I missed a lot of schooling because of the gymnastics. And so, yeah, I became very dedicated, very disciplined at my sport at a very young age. And it really gave me a big focus. It was incredibly hard work at times, but it absolutely shaped me into sort of the athlete and the person that I am today.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of sacrifices already as a child. So what did it do for you? What could you get from gymnastics that you couldn't find anywhere else, do you think?
You know, just a lot of dedication and discipline was the main things. A lot of my friends were doing lots of other sports, you know, going to parties. I literally never missed a training session. I travelled a lot as well. So I got to see the world, but, you know, it's not all glamorous. You know, you're often just sort of seeing hotel rooms and airports and then competing and coming back home again. You know, I grew up very quickly. I remember I went to Romania for 2 weeks on a training camp when I was only 9 years old, you know, and I didn't sort of speak to my mum or dad for nearly 2 weeks, and, you know, going to sort of a quite deprived country. And I remember that, you know, it wasn't the best experience, but we trained with some of the world's best gymnasts and squad at that time. And I think my kids now, and my son's 9, and I think, Christ, there's no way he'd be able to do that. And I look back and it was just sort of what I did then. You didn't even blink an eyelid, you know, that was my sport and that was part of the process. So yeah, I grew up very quickly. And, you know, like I say, when I think of how my kids are now, I wouldn't want them to go and do that. But for me, it was just a natural process, and it was almost like that was me. I was known as the gymnast.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was my whole identity for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I'm interested because obviously you hear all these stories of like young gymnasts and like Romania and how strict they are. Like, was that like a whole cultural change?
Oh
Like,
yeah,
I know you said it's
absolutely.
completely different.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. They lived in a centralized system then, so we stayed where they trained, and you know that their whole life was gymnastics. That's where they did little schooling. They trained twice a day. It was cold. The food was horrible. It was hard work, and I actually ended up having a Hungarian and a Romanian coach when I was 15 and 16, and they brought a lot of the European ethos over with them, and they coached us. And you know, some of it was great, some of it really was not great. And like I say, there was some really good times, but there was some really, really hard times as well.
How did you get through those hard times then? Obviously, were there any points during that your sort of childhood when you were in those camps and you were training that you just wanted to go home and see your parents and kind of give up? Like, how did you get through that and the tough times that you've just been referring to?
I think when I was younger, it was very much, I had a massive goal. My goal was to get to the Olympics, and you know, my whole training and life was revolved around doing that. You know, it was almost right. So I've got the British champion coming up. I've got the European Junior Championships coming up. There was so much structure to it, and you just sort of get swept along, and you sort of, you know, that was who I am. I absolutely loved doing it. I didn't not want to do it. The training was hard, you know, the coaches were hard. But we can talk about some of that in a little while, about sort of the disordered eating habits, trying to make yourself as small as you can, and how that affected me, especially as a teenager. I think though, as a gymnast, when I got to sort of 16, 17, it was very much then, I'm in this because I've got this far, even if I don't want to do it anymore. It's very much, I've got to last for the next 2 years because I'm nearly at my goal, even though I'm not enjoying doing it, you know, because of injury, because of sort of been this gymnast for my whole life now. And there was no sort of way out. I think that's because I loved HYROX so much, because it was always, you know, I'm choosing to do this, not I have got to do this. You know, everybody expected me, especially for those last 2 years, because I was so close to reaching sort of these goals. I just had to get to the Olympics. But it almost was like, well, I'm not enjoying this anymore. I don't want to do it. I'm constantly injured. I'm constantly sort of like not wanting to be in that environment, because it was such a negative environment by the time I left. And actually, when I did leave, it was a little bit of a relief. And yes, I hadn't got to the goal because I was injured, but I kind of got to the point where I was like, I'm just sick of constantly training and being injured all the time, surely there's got to be more to life than this. And I think that's why I approached HYROX in a way that it was like, I don't have to do this. I'm doing this because I'm choosing to do this. So I think my whole sort of persona changed because it was all on me. Nobody was making me do it anymore.
I mean, what made you not want to do it? I know you just briefly spoke about like the diet and the eating. You hear so much about that. I mean, what pressures were on you? Go on, go into a little bit more. I'm
Well,
interested.
they just the ethos back then, and I can't speak for how it is now, but how we were back then, we'd be weighed every Monday morning. We'd have our fat percentage taken, and I was constantly told I was fat and overweight from the age of 6 and weighed at every single squad training session. And, you're lined up in front of a group of girls and the coaches are all going, right, well, you've put a kilo on and you've lost a kilo and that's celebrated. And then, right, if you've put weight on, and we know as females from week to week, things change, especially when you're 15, 16, 17. You try to be as small as you can. It's a very aesthetic sport, gymnastics is. You're constantly judged on the way you look. And girls were missed off the team because they didn't weigh a certain amount, not based on performance. So, you've got that pressure. You're constantly in the pressure zone of one in, one out. If you're not performing, then we've got a whole other squad of girls in. So it was a very high pressure situation. And it was just how it is. That it might be different now. I'd like to think it is, but there was a lot of pressure to maintain and look a certain way. And then when you're not eating correctly and you're not fueling sessions, you're not getting the rest or the support and the recovery. I know this now, but when you're 14, 15, you go off what the adults are telling you, don't you? Those coaches in there, they're in a position of power, really. And if they're trying to make you to say, look, if you're 2 or 3 kilos lighter than you are now, then you're going to perform better, then that's what you aim for. And actually, your performance doesn't get better because you've got no energy, you're crash landing, constantly ill, and you're tired and you're injured. And, it's just such a snowball effect. But it was just such a negative place to be in. And I think those last 2 years just sort of destroyed me, really. I was just ready to leave and to get out of that environment.
That's what I was going to sort of say. Like, physically, you've described like what was happening to you, which is awful. And mentally, though, and emotionally, describe what that was doing to you as well, because piecing those two together really must have added to that negative space that you've been talking about. How did you feel emotionally with all this?
And I think, though, as an elite gymnast and as a person who'd been in elite sport for a long time, very quickly learn that, you don't deal with your emotions. You have to switch them off, and you don't think with your heart. You're very much sort of training with your head. Everything is sort of mapped out and methodical. So emotion didn't really come into it too much because you're constantly thinking as an athlete. I just knew that I was ready to sort of leave that part of me. But when I eventually did leave gymnastics, it was very much, well, who am I now? What is next? Like, everybody knows me as Rebecca the gymnast. I've got nothing else to fall back on. This is my whole world. I was in centralised training from the age of 15, so I wasn't even living at home. It was like, well, I don't want to go back home. I've not lived at home for how many years now? I don't want to go live back home. I need to find a job. I've got no qualifications. I got my GCSEs, thankfully. I could drive. So it was very much sort of rebuilding and finding out sort of, who am I? And that took a long time to find out. Thankfully I did get a job. I qualified as a coach, so I remained in sport. I worked, so I managed to sort of source myself. I rented a house for a long time, and then I managed to buy a house at quite a young age. So I was very independent, and I was very good at sorting me out. And I think that definitely has helped me sort of along the way as being an independent. If you want something done, you just get on with it and do it yourself. And you're in control of your own happiness. Very much that if you have the power to change your own life. And that was hard, but I think the gymnastics really taught me that from a young age, that anything that you want, you can go after, and you do have the power to change. It might take a while, but you will get there.
And for those who don't know, I know that you were obviously on the team to go forward to the Olympics and you trained all this time and, you got injured. I mean, how did that feel kind of cycle back a bit to take that got taken away from you? Do you know?
Yeah, and that was really hard. I went to the World Championships in 2003 and helped the team qualify. I competed in all four apparatus then, and I helped the team qualify for Athens. So I only had to sort of last 8 months to get to the Olympics. And I came back from the World Championships with a fractured ankle, a really bad wrist. My knee, I've always had knee issues, so my knee was bad, but it was my wrist that was the issue. And I think if I'd managed the programming better, I would have made it to the Olympics. But, the coaches then were very much all in for the Olympics. You're training. It's time to ramp up. And I just absolutely destroyed my wrist. I ruptured the ligaments in my wrists about 8 weeks before we were due to fly out to Barcelona. So before you go to the Olympics, you go to a holding camp first. So all of Team GB were flying out to Barcelona. Literally, as they flew out, I was being wheeled into the operating theatre to have my wrist put back together. And I remember coming around and the team doctor, was said to me, he says, look, you can try and come back for this, but I recommend that you don't, because ultimately, if you continue to do what you are, your long-term body is really going to suffer. And that was really hard. I was on my own. I was no longer part of a team. I'd lost my gymnastics. I hadn't had the success that everybody thought I was going to have because I hadn't achieved the Olympics. And now I was injured, and now I always lost that community as well because all my mates were all there still, and they were having that success. I'd had all this success as a youngster, and I just missed out on that last one. And that was obviously an incredibly low point. But I also felt a sense of relief a little bit as well because I knew it was over. And so it was very double-edged. Yes, I didn't achieve my dream and I feel really disappointed, and I'm sure other people are disappointed in me too. But also it's so ready to move on and find something else and sort of find who I am. As an 18-year-old, I've never had the opportunity to do that because all I have ever had is gymnastics. And I think that's why I was able to sort of deal with the HYROX thing so well because once you've been through something like that, nothing else can touch it. Once you realize you can deal with actually being at rock bottom like that, everything else is just like, I could do that on a new sport. 4 years ago, I didn't even know what HYROX. I'd done one HYROX event, and now it was nearly my whole world. I run my business doing it. I've become an athlete again through it. So you just sort of have that perspective of, there's other things. Just because that's ended doesn't mean that something else can't start.
And I think that's such an inspirational way of looking at that, because that Olympic dream sort of came and went, and it obviously taught you resilience, which is such a great skill to have, I think. And how long did it take you to make peace with your Olympic dream sort of falling through your fingertips, which was completely not your fault?
Probably a good a few years. I went in and worked. I did lots of different jobs, just tried to find out what I wanted to do. I went traveling, which was the best thing ever. I was on my own for a long time before I met my partners. I'd probably say a good 5 or 6 years to sort of find a decent sort of pathway and a one that I was happy with and one that I wanted to pursue work-wise with everything else that went on. So it's definitely not a short-term thing. And I think, we absolutely live in a world it's a microwave world, isn't it? Everybody wants everything immediately and now. And it's really hard to see the future and sort of put faith in what's coming. And I one of my biggest strengths, I would say, is being able to think, just because it's not here today, where do I want to be in a year's time? Everything that I do today will come back in a year. And, almost being able to have faith that it will come back. It won't be tomorrow and it won't be next week, but it will come.
Yeah. And I think as well, like Luce, we know from obviously living and working overseas, if you can travel and if you can see the world, it will teach you so much more than all these other things that, you're expected to do. And you had that on your shoulders from such a young age. And actually, when it ended, it was almost fate in a way. Like you said, it gave you that relief that you could stop, you could finish, you could rebuild yourself, and going traveling like that for me must have been that massive silver lining that happened obviously off the back of the Olympics.
No, absolutely. You know, I was very lucky that I was able to travel as a gymnast. You know, I did see the world, and I think that gave me the experience to be able to want to go and do that again, you know, but on my own terms, and actually enjoy it a little bit more, and you know, to realize there is a big wide world out there. There is lots to explore and lots to do. So, yeah, in my early 20s when I went out and did that, and I'd 100% recommend my kids to do that as well. You know, you learn a lot from that.
100%.
Yeah, I was literally going to say that about, I mean, I've met your kids, and I mean, it's great that obviously you want to give him that opportunity, but I mean, how do they see you as well? Do they see you as like mum, the superhero athlete, or
No.
just mum who can get them to
Yes,
the
mum in
right
my own
hockey
like them to
game?
make it a move.
Yeah. Where's my dinner, mum? That mum.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, just that weirdo who gets up every morning still and sits on the bike or gets cold in the cold tub. Then it's like, where is she? Oh, she's outside again. Weirdo.
Have you got one of those plunge pools? Have you? Every time I go to sorry, digress. Every time we go to like a sauna or something, I'm always like, right, I'm definitely going to do the plunge pool today, and I chicken out every single time. But I know the benefits are so good. So the fact that you've got in your garden,
I've
and
got
your
one
kids
as well,
like,
Hannah.
well,
You
I
need
didn't
to
see that
get
when I came
one.
to your house.
It wasn't there years ago.
Well, next time we actually frequent each other's houses, I'm going to promise you I'm going to get in that plunge pool.
Yeah.
It is good. It is good. It is cold in the winter. I go in with like a hat on at the minute, but no, they came with me to see some of my HYROX, and I think that was one of a really important thing for me to do, and why I wanted to pursue HYROX and see where I could go, was because they never got to see me as the gymnast, obviously, but they came and watched me and were and saw and cheered and were so supportive. I couldn't have done the amount that I did if they weren't, you know, if they weren't all in as well. So yeah, it was really nice that they could see me as a small glimpse of me as an athlete as well.
No. And I mean, I know you through HYROX and moving on to that journey. I mean, what got you into HYROX? Obviously, you left gymnastics, you started a family, and then boom, this new thing comes.
Well, actually, before I did HYROX, I did obstacle course racing.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, say again. This is someone who does not know anything about fitness, really. So yeah, explain.
So basically, you know the Spartan race that I had my accident?
Yes,
I did
Becca
that
was very
competitively.
Okay. Back on it. I'm back on it. Right.
So I started doing that, and I joined Rumble, who are a obstacle course racing team. So I joined them and did a few races with them, and then we got shut down. So we went into COVID, and they started to introduce some HYROX workouts, and that's how I was first introduced to HYROX. Was they grew a really strong online community during COVID. They were incredibly clever how they did it, because they couldn't do any sort of in-person events. They did virtual events. So they did a virtual world championships. They did Thursday night Zoom nights where you could all jump on and do bodyweight exercises in your kitchen. And, you know, it was just, again, building a community and being part of something. And then I actually won one of their competitions online and got a free ticket. And the ticket I entered to do Birmingham, and that was 4 years ago, I think. Yeah, 4 years ago. And so we'd just come out of COVID, and I was like, let's go and do a little bit of a challenge. Did all the online WODs, like 6 weeks, and just rocked up in Birmingham on my own and ran the HYROX, and hated it and loved it all at the same time. And decided that after that, obviously came nowhere, did rubbish, and decided that actually if I trained a little bit for this and understood the sport a little bit more, there was another one coming up in Manchester, which isn't far from where I am. So if I did 3 months worth of training, let's see if I can do better. Now I've done one, and I ended up winning that event and getting my ticket to World Championships in Vegas, and it just snowballed from there.
Amazing. I can't wait to hear more about that. I just kind of wanted to circle back slightly because you said you went traveling, had your kids, then obviously went into the obstacle racing. So was there a part of you when you were sort of being a mum and bringing your kids up and having that sort of wholesome family life, it was always missing that kind of competitiveness or fitness? Was it kind of in the back of your mind that you wanted to do it again? And what age were the kids when you were sort of like, this is about me now again?
Yeah. I thought obviously I'm a personal trainer by trade as well. So, you know, that's sort of, I'm in the gym every day still. I do online coaching as well as one-to-one PTs.
Good plug.
Yeah. So I don't think a lot of people realize I still actually work within a gym environment still. I still work with regular normal people, which is great, and I'll always want to do that. I think you learn a lot from just working with the general public. Athletes are great, but they're not the majority. You know, they are dedicated, disciplined people. And I think it's very grounding to still work with the people that still need to kick up the bum to do 1 hour exercise a week. So that's good. It's good for
I'm
me.
just looking at Hannah.
That's me. Although, Becca, I will say I've got a 40-kilo Labrador that needs walking twice a day, and he's a machine, and I've got a 3-year-old. So I'm holding my hands up.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, so I was always been involved in health, fitness and sport. And we had a couple of local events, obstacle course racing called X Runner. And they're only like 20 minutes down the road from where I live. Lots of hills and water. And, you know, I just entered them, you know, just as a fun thing to do, just a little bit of a challenge. And that's where I ended up finding out that actually it was a sport. Obstacle course racing was an actual sport. Who knew? So that's where it's sort of, I entered a Spartan, and then I thought, oh, there's some teams here. Like, again, it's that sense of community. You know, you almost sort of find your people a little bit, you know, like being part of something. And so, yeah, I just sort of jumped into that first. I did enjoy it, but I knew there was something missing from it. Whereas when I found HYROX, I knew that was very much me. There was the power and the strength, as well as sort of the running side of things, and it being indoors was a big bonus.
So tell us more about HYROX, because you, like I said, you were known maybe even for a couple of years. You were the top female athlete in the UK. You were like 5th in the world.
Yeah.
Wow.
At one stage as well. Like, it's a massive achievement. I mean, tell us, like, obviously you started at Birmingham, Manchester. What happened at the World Champs in Vegas then?
Yeah, no one was more surprised than me when I became world champion. I remember that moment, and it was a very sort of defining moment. I remember standing on the podium and thinking, maybe I could be an athlete again. I never thought I would be that. I thought my time had gone when I was a gymnast. You know, I was a gymnast and that was my athletic life. You know, now I'm a mum. And I remember, like, when I was first racing, I raced in full tracksuit, whereas you look at them now and they're all in tiny crop tops and shorts. And you know, I was like, I'm not getting my mum to come out. No one needs to see that. You know, very much like, let's just rock up and see what I've got and what I can do. Like, no expectation at all. You know, training wasn't much of a priority. I even didn't know whether we were going to go to Vegas or not, because I was like, God, it's a lot of money. Why would I want to spend that money on me? We could go on a nice family holiday for that. It was all very much, I'm second to everything, but my other half, he was the one that convinced us to go. He was like, I've never been to America. Let's go. Let's just go and have a good time. No pressure or anything. And so it was really relaxed. So yeah, when I won, obviously I was elated, but I was like, maybe I should take this a bit more seriously now. And train for this. And it was a moment of, if I'm going to do this, I know what being an athlete is about. I've done it before. Am I prepared to go down that route? Because when you want to be an elite athlete, that comes first. You know, you're up early. Your whole day revolves around your training. You're up early, and I've got 2 kids to look after. When I was a gymnast, I could train 6 hours. I could rest. I had my meals made. I could go to physio. I could have an early night. Now it was like, no, you're going to be an elite athlete, and you've still got to work, and you've still got to look after the kids, and you've still got to travel, and you've still got to fund yourself, and you've got to be all these different roles. So I knew that it was going to be hard, but I also knew it was something that I wanted to try and do again. And, you know, I just made that decision over the summer to go all in for that next season and see where I could get to. And obviously the top of the HYROX is the Elite 15. And I remember writing in my training book in September, preparing for that season, and I put the road to the Elite 15 on the front page of because I always keep a training diary, and then on the back page, all the goals that I wanted to achieve that season. And I'd only just become world champion and I'd won one pro event, and yet I was writing, I want to hit this time, I want to set the British record, I want to do this and do that and do that, and I want to defend my title, and I want to race in an Elite 15 event. And so really big stupid goals that I never thought would come true, but you know what, I hit every single one of them. And actually I didn't defend my title because I got to race in the Elite 15 race at the World Championships in Manchester on home soil. And, that was just incredible. So, yeah, it was. And I'm very much a fan of that. Things are vision. I didn't put a time span on it. I didn't say that I was going to achieve all that in a season, but I knew I had a very clear goal. And I also thought, because I'm sacrificing a lot and I'm asking the family to sacrifice a lot for me, I've got to make it work almost, I've got this sort of external, if I'm going all in, they've got to go all in, and, I've got to make it worth everybody's while. But I think because even though I had all these external things, I was very grateful for them, because it meant that I still had a lot of balance in my life. And that was one thing I didn't have as a gymnast. I was just a gymnast, just an athlete. So when everything collapsed, that was very hard. Whereas, right now I've got all these things, and it is a bit of a plate juggle, but also it's very much, it keeps everything in perspective. And I was very grateful to have all that support and all these external things still to fall back on when obviously I was told that I couldn't HYROX anymore. It was a blow, but it knew it wasn't going to be the end of the world.
Right, yeah.
I think that, as you were talking, obviously, a million questions are coming into my head about what I wanted to say, and you were sort of answering them as you were going on. And the one thing I was going to say was, were you nervous that you were going to go back to that space as a gymnast where you had those couple of years where it was awful and you were obviously getting, weighed and everything was really negative, but you were answering that question as you were going on by saying, well, I had my externals to fall back on and I had the balance and it was my decision. And I think that's just fantastic that you were able to sort of compartmentalize everything and do it that way. And also having the kids, like we were saying earlier, you're just mum to them. You're going and doing all these competitions and coming home, and they will keep you grounded when they're like, yeah, that's great, mum, but actually I want to go to this, I want to do that, I want to go to a play area, which is fantastic and a really good way of keeping you grounded. What did they think though when you were sort of going away and you were starting to reach these goals that you'd wrote in the back of your book? And were they starting to realize, okay, my mum's a bit of a big deal actually, and are they inspired by you? Do you have conversations about what they can do with their life? And it might not be fitness, but how they can apply all your sort of positive and inspiration to their life. Have you had those conversations?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, they do love sport themselves. They're not sort of elite level, but I like that. They like to try lots of different things. Scarlett is into a hockey and a horse riding, and Dominic very much is a really good rugby player. And we've got some equipment at home, and they will often go in and use the gym themselves. It's not something that I have to ask them to do. They'll go in or if they want a little circuit setting up, I'll set up a circuit. And so they've seen it as a very much part of our lifestyle, but they see it in a very much as a fun, positive way. Whereas I think sometimes when I was younger, I saw it as quite a negative thing that I had to do. Whereas they see it as a sort of a very much of a celebration of, this is good. It makes you feel good. You're to move your body and you want to get stronger. And I think I'm very conscious as well of how we speak to each other around weight and body image, especially Scarlett, who is 12, nearly 13. And, she's at that age now where body's changing and hormones are kicking in. And, I think back to how I was and the pressures that I had. And it scares me a little bit to think that she would feel any sort of anything that I had to go through. I want her to love her body for what it can do, not for a number on a scale.
Yeah.
And I know we've mentioned your injury a few times, and I know your knee has been the main thing. That was
Yeah.
that the obviously I know it was your wrist in the Olympics. Your
Mm.
knee's always played up, but
Mm.
tell us more about that, like because it's always kind of been there, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. Well, I was first diagnosed with a knee issue when I was 15, and it took me out of gymnastics for nearly 18 months. So I didn't
Mm.
compete for 18 months when I was 15. So it was basically from the transition from a junior to a senior, and obviously at a time of my life as well when the changes were happening with my body. I was training less, and so my body changed a lot. And again, that put a lot of negativity on how I looked, and coaches would be very sort of strict around that. So yeah, I was first diagnosed with osteochondritis, which is a bone condition. It can be quite common in young athletes, and it never really went away. It was almost like, well, you kind of had nearly 18 months off competing. We need to get back if we're going to go after the Olympics. So I did. I got back. It was never fully healed, and I continued to train on it. And then obviously when I stopped gymnastics, I stopped sort of all the impact on the training and let my body and bones develop. And then I had my kids, and I was started running again, and obviously doing the OCR stuff, and then into the HYROX. And as soon as I started ramping up my running, then sort of the knee issue sort of really kicked in again. And it's funny you should ask that, really, because sort of over the last sort of year since it completely went, where I was out. So I'd competed in Stockholm at the Elite 15, and I came 5th. So I secured my spot for the Elite World Championships in Nice. So I had that qualification. So I was literally like on top of the world and the best that I could ever do. And then 6 weeks later, I couldn't walk, and
No.
I'd gone from sort
Wow.
of this again to being like, I can't move my knee, I can hardly walk, I'm hobbling, I can't go to work properly, what am I going to do? Under consultant care, and they're like, well, you've got these 2 cysts within your knee, you've got the osteoarthritis, we can try and put a steroid in it to try and get you through to the knees, but the issue's still there. We don't think it's the best thing for you. And you just don't want to hear that at the time. You just sort of want to get to that next goal. So I got all these different people's opinions, and it all just boiled down to, it's a massive overuse injury. Ultimately, the only thing that's going to make your knee better is by having a new one. And at 38, we're not prepared to do that. And we don't think it's the best thing for you right now. So we advise you to just stop.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, you did the doubles race though as well, didn't you?
Yes, so I went with Kate to try and test it, really. It was a bit of a test event.
Yeah.
Let's just say I hadn't ran, and it felt all right because I hadn't been running and managed to get the swelling down. And that was a very much, well, let's see what happens. And it was just not a good thing at all. I remember I was sitting on the rower going, shall we carry on or shall we not carry on? And I was like, really gaining anything from this, are we? And I think at that moment I was like, yeah, that's the end of this now. I'm not in this again. I don't need to go down this route anymore. I don't need to prove anything to myself or to anybody else. I'm sick of being in pain again. And let's just move on from me as an athlete. Yeah, it was sad. My kids were there as well, and Stu was there, and I remember just walking off course ever.
No. I remember we were all tracking you there as well. Like, obviously, there's a few of us, obviously, from the camp, and we're like, where's she gone? Where's she gone? Is there an like, no, like, and then, it was devastating. I think
Yeah.
for, obviously,
I think
not
everybody
only for
knew that was
yourself,
a
but
make or
everyone.
break race, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. I mean, 100% was the right decision to do that thing. You're just at the point where, nothing is worth going through, putting your body through that again. I needed to think, and that's the very much where I am now, is I put my body through a lot as an athlete, and I want to be the oldest person in the gym when I'm 70, not the youngest person in the nursing home. I want
Yeah.
to be.
Love that.
Yeah, I want to, that like longevity and movement, and I'm in such a better position now than I was 14 months ago. I never want to go back to that place. You've just got to readjust your goals, and ultimately your long-term health has to be priority.
Yeah, I think the way you've explained was sort of picturing you sort of coming off the track and just again just being like, this is it, This is decision. This is my body telling me
Yeah.
that enough's enough. And I think you were so brave to go back at it again and become an athlete for a second time. I'm not even going to do it for once, let alone twice. So I think that like you are obviously both physically very strong, but mentally, I think you are very strong. And I think that links back to what you were talking us through in your childhood, that it made you the person you are today. So although it was very tough, it allowed you then to deal with HYROX the way that you did, because like you said, you'd been through it once and that was snatched away from you, and then you've come and, you know, gone through that kind of decision making of, right, okay, let's do it again, let's become an athlete. And then for it to happen a second time and to be sat here just saying, do you know what, it's much better to be the oldest person in the gym, not the youngest person in the nursing home. I just think that, again, so inspirational. I think it's brilliant. And I think your kids are very proud of you.
Yeah, no, and it was just a nice opportunity for them to see me as an athlete. And just talking about the mental side of things, you know, as a coach, is often the missing piece that I see so much within athletes, is they can have absolutely smash the training, you know, they can have some really good numbers and some really good data, but you know, that mental resilience is really hard to coach. You either got it or you haven't. Speak to a lot of elite athletes, you know, that gives them their advantage. Not their figures, not what they're lifting, not what they're running. It's their head. And, you know, either got that or you haven't. And that's really, really hard to coach and to get out of somebody who has to want it and has to sort of have their own way of dealing with that and pushing through some of the harder times.
Yeah. And obviously talking about the mental side, I mean, for anybody, they could be just doing a couch to 5K, they could be doing a marathon. What advice would you give to anyone who's faced an injury or just a general setback? Just not to say, not even like, fuck it, because obviously if your body's telling you something, listen to it, which obviously I had to listen to.
Disclaimer.
But also, like, what advice would you give to them not like to give up, like you say, mentally, to move on from it?
I think when I was really struggling last summer, so sort of 14 months ago, and my injury got a lot worse before it got better. I think in my head, I was sort of very much blocking out a lot of the pain. And it wasn't until I stopped and allowed my body to catch up and my head to be a bit like, no, your knee is not in a good place. You know, it got worse before it got better, is to sort of just take it one day at a time and focus on all that you can do, because there is always something that you can do. And, you know, I literally went from being able to walk 1,000 steps a day, which was minimum, to sort of every week just trying to increase it a little bit more. And, you know, I woke up in the morning and was like, right, what can I do today? What does my body need to do? Can I go for a walk? Does it just need to rest? Do I need to do some mobility? Can I go on the bike? You know, and actually not be too structured. I've been in HYROX and as a gymnast, it was very structured and it was done. And that was great because you see that progress. But actually, I think coming through injury or illness, you know, you have to take that away and just be like, okay, what do I need to do? I need to listen to my body. And if it just wants to rest today, then let's just do that rest, because actually tomorrow, I'm probably going to be able to do a little bit more. And just having patience and actually understanding that, you know, it's going to take a lot longer than you're wanting it to take, unfortunately.
Lucy, you need to listen to that advice.
I did. I just went look. It's funny because actually I'm going to move on, and it's actually a perfect moment then because obviously you've gone for everything. I mean, do you ever think, I've been taken from the Olympics, like this has been taken, I've got a new purpose in life? And obviously moving on to that, I mean, I was in A&E at the time when I had that infection, and we were messaging. Becca's like, I've been offered this new opportunity, and like, and I'll let Becca take over.
Yeah.
But I mean, what you're doing now is, I mean, I'm so excited to hear more because, go on.
Yeah, I can't wait either.
No, so I now coach for Proven, who are Proven Fitness, who are sort of like the leading global fitness company in the world. And that was a big step as well. You know, I'd gone from coaching, running my own online business to joining them. And ultimately, I had to shut my own business down. So a business that I'd worked on for a year and was incredibly proud of, and had some amazing athletes who, you know, I often joke, I speak to my athletes more than I actually speak to my friends. You know, I actually have a better live conversation with them. You know, I speak to them nearly every single day. know a lot about them, probably more than some of their friends know about them as well, which is great. And that's exactly how I want it to be. But this opportunity came up and, you know, I had to make a decision I felt like I was letting people down a little bit because I'd sort of got them so far and I didn't want to let them go, but I knew I had to. It very much felt like the right thing to do. Some people took it really well and were very supportive, and some people did not. And actually, that made me realize that it was the right thing to do, because I think we can get very good at being in our comfort zone. And one of the main reasons I decided to take that opportunity with Proven was, you know, I can continue to run my business as me and have all my own ideas. But again, we come back to that community. How am I ever going to grow and get better if I'm not learning from other people who know more than me? You know, I'm sat at my table on my own, helping and supporting athletes and programming because of my own knowledge of how I was coached and my own learnings. Whereas I can now go and tap into some of the world's best coaches in hybrid sports, have weekly conversations with them and little nuggets and progress. And it is, you know, massive out of my comfort zone, but it's definitely the right thing to do. And again, I would just take every opportunity that I could. And so, yeah, I took that step to shut my own business down and join somebody else. And actually, most of my clients now are in Australia and America, which feels very weird.
Mental. Yeah.
Yeah, because before that it was all UK based. But again, it's just sort of progressing me. And I am absolutely loving it. It 100% was the right decision. And I've learned so much already. So yeah.
Do you still get daft comments like I used to give you, like, I got stuck under the bar today and someone had to save me?
I'd quite save you. I'm thousands of miles away.
Are you okay? I didn't manage to get out of it because you text me.
I was going to say though, like, that's a huge gamble that's paid off. And obviously, I'm so pleased that it's the right decision and you're sat here today really happy about it. And I take it then you get to go and travel to Australia and America and tick those travel boxes off again?
Yeah, I have been. I went to Chicago for the World Championships at the end of last season. Yeah, and I need to go to Nashville. So that's where their headquarters is. And they keep saying, like, just let us know when you're coming and we'll sort everything for you. So it is definitely on the cards. It's just life's so busy. And, you know, we're into a new season again. Like, this is my 5th HYROX season now. And just sort of every weekend there's something else on, you know, constantly, which I love. That's exactly how I want it to be. But yeah, it's just sort of staying on top of it all. But like I say, I like the balance of having an online business and also being able to work with people in person. So it's a really nice thing. And I like to hope and think that a lot of the stuff that I have been through, one as an athlete, as a gymnast and as a HYROX athlete, I can then sort of put onto my clients, and having that understanding of what they're going through is massive.
Yeah, I think that is perfect, what you've been through and been able to apply that to your clients. And who better to learn and know that from than you? So absolutely. I was just going to say, what's better then, being in the competitions or now watching from the sidelines and cheering on those that you've coached, that you've trained, that you're able to like motivate and witness them rise? Like, what's better upon reflection of everything you've been through?
Find easier racing because I was in control. You know, if I messed up, I messed up. You know, that was on me. It's so hard watching and cheering on because you want them to do so well. I've had like Stu says to me, you know, you get to run the race and you get to let all that adrenaline off. Whereas like when you stood on the sidelines, you're just willing them to be on and you can't sort of help or do it for them. So I definitely find it easier racing than being cheer squad. And, you know, you see the effort and the training and the discipline that goes into that week in, week out. And then when it doesn't come together on race day, that disappointment, and it's sort of just getting them back on track and trying to make people realize that, yeah, you might have had a bad race, but life goes on. And at some point it will come right. You know, at some point it will all come together. A lot of things have to go right for things to come together. And I think one thing I really learned from lining up on the Elite 15 was none of those athletes were afraid to fail. You're stood on that start line, and if you want to get a result that you've not done before, you've got to race or go for something harder than you've ever tried. You've got to leave it all out on the line, and that's a gamble. Sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't pay off, and that is sport, isn't it? Unfortunately, and if you're afraid to fail, that you shouldn't really. You're going to limit your own progress. So yeah, accept the failure, because it's very much part of it.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I feel like now, I mean, you've been from, obviously for a lot, you've talked about the failures and the highs, the lows. I mean, if you can tell young Becca anything now, what advice would you give her to kind of like go forward and say everything's
I
going to
would
be
say,
okay?
it's going to be okay. Just to let her know that everything that you have done and been through, it's all worth it. It will all work its way out. And if I had to do it all again, I absolutely would.
Amazing. And to be honest, do you think she would have believed you
No.
at the time?
No, definitely
Well,
not.
I think this story has been so inspirational, and I am going to get myself a book and I'm going to write all my goals in the back. I'm not going to put a time frame on them, and I'm going to work towards, and I'm going to show you in a year's time where I'm at.
Right. Now, screenshot a picture of you and Becca and put it in your book.
Yeah,
Put it on your wall.
Put it on the wall. Right, I'm going to do that in a minute. Once we start recording, I'm going to get my phone. I'm going to take a picture. But before we do all that, we are going to be asking this to all our guests, and we want to know who Becca is becoming now.
I am becoming a much more rounded, balanced person. I think that is definitely something that I have really worked hard on in this last year. I will be 40 next year, so I am looking forward to embracing the highs and lows that will come with being in my next decade. I always sort of lead opportunities with the question of, why not me? And I've done that for the last couple of years. And that's exactly sort of kind of how I lead things in. Why not me? Why would somebody else take that opportunity or do that? They're no more qualified than me. So continuing to lead with that question. And I suppose, just being a little bit less apologetic and asking better questions would be sort of the thing that I would want to become better at.
Fabulous.
Amazing.
And then one last question, because I know you've been on a number of podcasts. Would you say this is the best podcast you have ever been on?
Absolute, the best, most funnest one.
Yes.
I'm taking that. I was going to say, don't worry, I'll edit it out, but I'm definitely keeping that in anyway.
No, let's keep that in. Absolutely.
Oh, fantastic. Well, like I say, it's been brilliant to have you on, Beck. I've lined you up from day one. As soon, even before Hannah was even a co-host, you were lined up as to be like the first guest. So thank you so much for joining me. Thank you again for all your support, obviously, from myself, from my HYROX journey through the injury. And all I've got to say now is bye from me.
Bye from me, and like and subscribe and share with your clients in Australia and America, please. Thank you, Becca.
Thank you. And then bye from Beck. Bye.
Right, I need to take my picture.